Hello everyone, I'm Sunny D and welcome back to another episode of the Appalachian Expose. Our own Shane Douglas recently got to sit down with Brian Myers, aka Kurt Hawkins, to discuss growing up an ECW fan, his time in the WWE, and how the business has changed throughout the years.
Yeah, I'm really excited to be sitting here today with somebody that beckons back to another ECW brother of mine, Mikey Whipwreck, Brian Murphy, known also as Curtis Hawkins from the WWE.
Brian Myers.
Oh, shit. I said, what? You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I'm really excited to be sitting here today with an exceptional talent, somebody from the newer generation that isn't one of those guys that can't go out and do it. But he also beckons back to some ECW fraternity. Mikey Whipwreck trained him. Brian Myers here, also known as Curtis Hawkins. First of all, welcome. Appreciate you being here today. There's so many things I want to ask you. First of all, how was training with Mikey Whipwreck?
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I know Mikey personally, so he's a strange cat. But I was telling you actually in the car, like, you think of Mikey and ECW, and you think of just like maybe brawling or a different style. Sure. But he was so fundamentally sound, and those things that he's instilled in me back then, I think have kept me safe in my 17 years in the business and stuff. Like proper footwork and getting up the right way and things like that. Things that I don't think a fan would ever really understand, but it just keeps you safe and sound in your ring awareness, knowing where you are at all times, things like that. And he's deceivingly fluid. Like, he would show us stuff, leapfrogs and drop kicks and wow. Like, there was very head scissors, like really impressive stuff. So I was very, very fortunate to have found him and found him so close to where I grew up. It was like almost like wrestling fate that he was training.
Curious, what led you to want to get into professional wrestling?
So, just the first time I ever saw it, my brother rented a tape from like a mom and pop video store. It was WrestleMania 6, Warrior and Hogan, and he brought it home, and I was like, what is this? And it just captivated me.
And how old were you at this point?
I was 5, and never let me go. Even in my house to this day, I have like a man cave, if you will, and I have that pay-per-view poster just because it reminds me of like, sometimes, when this gets tough or whatever, it reminds me like, why did I start this in the first place, and that those childhood feelings kind of come back, and I have that there to remind me, but it's Warrior and Hogan, and there's lightning bolts coming down behind them. They literally look larger than life, that's what it was, and it just captivated me, and I never let it go. It was just so fascinated,
Well, don't you find, my case very similar, 6 years old, started watching studio wrestling, have loved it ever since, and I can literally watch great wrestling 24 hours a day. Was it the same thing for you, like once you were hooked with that poster and that pay-per-view?
So it was like an evolution, So like, I'm 5 and I get the toys, and I love, Ultimate Warrior and the Rockers because they're jumping off the screen with their neon colors and stuff. Yeah. But then it evolves. I remember I was in the toy store and I found WCW guys, and I was like, what is this? There's other wrestling? That's another chapter. And I discovered WCW, and I find those guys and figure out what's going on there. And then a big moment, honestly, in my life was getting at when Worlds Collide pay-per-view. Do you remember that in the mid-90s? Yeah. I got that tape like from a friend, and it was just like, because that was like a whole nother layer I peeled back on this, this thing that I'm learning about.
Sure.
And then eventually it got to where ECW, which is like my bread and butter, and it kind of went with the way I was growing up too, I'm getting older, a little more mature, and then ECW was right there for me. It was like perfect time, chicks and violence, and like, it was awesome.
Now, like my kids, well, first of all, athletic background.
Football, wrestling, baseball, right through, all throughout high school. I actually had like a partial scholarship to wrestle in college.
Nice.
But I was so enthusiastic about pro wrestling, I started training that spring and through the summer, where I should have been getting ready for an wrestling, and then I showed up, and like my heart couldn't have been more out of it because I was doing what I really wanted to do. And I just kind of faked it for a year and I told my coach, I said, hey man, I'm doing this pro wrestling on the side, that's what I want to do, and I'm going to quit. And he laughed in my face and brushed me off.
Isn't it crazy how the people like us that were such big fans and loved the business, still love the business, that people outside, I remember one time a friend of mine came to me, a kid I grew up with, and he said, everybody's laughing at you. And I said, about what? He said, about this wrestling stuff. Now, my first thought was like, why would anybody give a damn what I'm doing, And like the people that don't get it don't get it, and I find that there's a lot of people in the world that won't ever reach for their dream. And when you get to this age, when you get to this age, if you haven't tried, it's one thing to try and fail. That's a bitter pill sometimes, but at least you tried. If you hadn't have done it, the fan that you're expressing that you were as a 5-year-old and then getting older, you'd be kicking yourself in the ass right now that you hadn't tried it. And look at all the doors it's opened for.
Oh yeah. I mean, I've had a very blessed career, but I never really had doubt in my mind. I was like, I'm going to do this whatever it takes, And I've had a lot of lucky breaks and things like that. But like, I remember just kind of like my high school sweetheart girlfriend. Her dad would call me Hulk Hogan behind my back and make fun of me. Or sometimes I was in the room because he thought I was just such a dummy for wanting to pursue this and like not being ashamed of it and just telling people like, hey, I'm going to try to be a pro wrestler, once high school's over and stuff. So I always kind of just I'm like, I pretty much proved that dickhead wrong, but
good. Well, I mean, it's amazing to me because like at the time you were starting to break in, wrestling was in its peak years. I mean, it was like maybe just a little bit past it, but still, and I beat the fans over the head all the time. At the peak years when WCW, ECW, and WWF then were competing, there was an average viewership per week of 48 to 52 million people. That would be what, 1 in 6 people in the population. And we were legitimate rock stars. So if you had gone to your girlfriend's father and said, hey, I'm gonna try my hand at music and I'm a really good guitarist, or I'm gonna try my hand at acting, and you could look at what the Rock's making now in acting, right? But for some reason, professional wrestling carries with it that stigma.
Always, and I don't know if that's something that'll ever shake. Even with, I think, like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, most famous, successful guy in the world, and everyone knows he was a wrestler. There's still that little like, I don't know. I don't think wrestling anyone's trying to fool anybody anymore. You know what I mean? That's why I don't understand why the stigma stays. Because like, if you go to a good movie, you don't walk out of it and go, "Oh, that's Tom Cruise is in a secret. That movie sucked."
Right.
But for some reason, wrestling gets that. Like, it doesn't make any sense, and I don't know when it's ever gonna get fully shaken or if ever. But it's pretty unfair. But it is what it is.
Well, you're probably right about that. But it's curious for me because like seeing how your trajectory, my kids, thank God. They were able to go in and out of the dressing room, and they thought it was really cool. And they grew up watching, the Hardy Boys and the Dudleys, and they loved it. I mean, they were every day playing with their action figures and watching the pay-per-view, the video games, and all the rest of the stuff. And just one day they stopped, and it was like maybe 6 months later I started like going back and trying to figure out like what happened. Like overnight, the light switch off on, and it coincided when both of them started wrestling amateur. So it's to me that is such a big plus in the business to have like an amateur background. You understand the basics of wrestling, and to incorporate that into your matches in a way that I think is badly missed today.
I was such a sponge for like anything I get my hands on, like in my wrestling fandom and curiosity. I read like an interview with Bret Hart very early on when I was in high school, where he was saying like backyard wrestling, and that was very popular at the time. And he was saying like, that's not what we do. I promise you. Like, you're just pretending, and it's you need to get properly trained to be a pro wrestler. You can't just do what we do. And it stuck with me where I didn't do that backyard wrestling, and I applied myself to sports because I knew that like that was all I could do at the time. So that's where that came from. And then obviously the camaraderie, and you love it. And I'm glad I did it. It was a great time in my life.
Well, the business is I'm sure you've heard me over the years just rail against it. Had the pleasure of working with you tonight in the ring, first time ever. And for me, the business is so sorely needing guys like Dolph Ziggler, like Bobby Roode, like what you can do. And I watch it just from a distance and watch the business, and I see a guy like Bobby Roode, you or Dolph Ziggler, utilized to a certain point, like you said, made a good career out of it. But it like makes when I can't figure something out, I can't stop thinking about it as to why you guys weren't household names.
I don't have the answer to that either. I mean, I have assumptions, but I just think that a certain person pictures you one way, and to change that perception is next to impossible. I don't know.
It's crazy.
And if you watch the product, you're never going to truly know who really is the best, because those people are never going to be given the chance to show how great they are. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's tough. I mean, it's frustrating, and I use this analogy all the time. Like, I'm a huge New York Mets fan. If I
Tom Seaver this week.
Yeah.
Rest in peace.
Yeah, rest in peace, Tom. Terrific. If I was the best hitter on the Mets, I would be in the lineup every day.
Absolutely.
You would not sit me on the bench.
Correct.
In WWE, that's not the case.
Yeah.
They got some of their best power hitters, cleanup guys just sitting there doing nothing, and then they're putting this whatever lineup they want out there. You know, it doesn't correlate.
Well, I think the only explanation I've ever been able to come up with is that the politics of the business. But again, like I remember Dusty Rhodes years ago saying, if you could put asses in seats, I want you on my team.
You would think, yeah.
And we've seen it go so far away from that now. And, you know, again, there's a handful of guys that I watch and really enamored with them. You can see, you know, somebody's been in the business for 40 years can look at somebody and say, hey, they've got something.
Absolutely, yeah.
Like I told you earlier tonight about Bobby Roode that first time in TNA when they were doing the Team Canada thing. He did something that was so simple and yet so elegant. He just, instead of just like speeding up and going more and more and more, he stopped and slowly just panned to the hard camera and the audience with that Bobby Roode look. It was magic, and I thought, my God,
he's literally a 5-tool player. Like there's nothing, nothing he can't do for you.
And yet you see him go to WWF and just a sort of an also-ran, and it's just like what a missed opportunity for the company, for the fans. You know, I think that's a big part of what's wrong with the business today. When you look at the numbers, again, you know, Vince doing 1.6, 2 million is up a little bit, up down a little bit. You know, and I watch kids today that their athleticism just jaw drops me.
Of course,
you know, they defy gravity.
Yeah.
But they'll do it, and afterwards you don't feel like a point where you want to jump to your feet and scream or get pissed at somebody. Or
at the end of the day, the athleticism is pretty cool, but how many flips you can do or whatever, you know. Yeah. And that stuff is spectacular, but you know.
Right.
Yeah.
So in TNA now, how long have you been with TNA now?
It's been 2 months. So
nice.
It's been a breath of fresh air for me, you know, like it's a different, you know,
in what way?
Because I've been 17 years now, and like 13 of that's been with WWE and under their umbrella. So I was just very used to that way. You know, it's cool to like, you know, have input or have my own creative input and like where it actually goes, you know, my thoughts actually go somewhere and someone's listening and we alter things and we compromise and, you know, put input into things, you know. Right. And I have no problem saying like WWE at a certain point, you know, I was just basically, I sold out, you know, I got a huge contract and I just, you know, went and did what I did. It was a job, and my podcast became like my creative outlet and things, you know, I could go there and have this, you know, 6-minute match with some football player, leave, go do my podcast, have fun. And it just kind of was what it was. It wasn't what I meant for my career to be, you know, but I just sold out basically, you know, I have no problem with that.
Well, you can only beat your head against the wall so long, right?
Yeah.
And you know, nothing wrong in going for the money if once you realize that they're not going to utilize your talent.
You just feel like every suggestion just goes on deaf ears. It's like, what's, you know, what am I doing here?
Yeah, fighting City Hall. Yeah. So what's your thoughts on the success of your podcast? What's your thoughts on what we just heard coming out of WWE yesterday with the...
Well, Matt Cardona, Zack Ryder, my partner, we were talking about it, you know, when all this news came out. We were like, man, we would have had a very interesting conversation with The Office if we were still employed, because the other crazy thing is we came to them with this concept. Like, we tried to give it to them. Mm-hmm. We literally said, like, hey, we have this idea. They already have, I don't know if you know this, Xavier Woods has a very successful video game channel that's with WWE, that's a working relationship, like, so that won't be jeopardized in this third party thing. Mm-hmm. Makes a lot of money for the company, you know, video games, wrestling, boom. We literally pitched it like that. It would be the up, up, down, down of action figures. And we'll be the guys, blah, blah, blah. Deaf ears. Again, deaf ears. Finally, we're like, F it, we'll do it ourselves. We'll use our shoot names.
Sure.
And it was the best thing we ever did in our careers, because it's just been unbelievable. Like, you know, it's taken off like we never could have imagined. And there's no, like, now where it's at over 2.5 years or whatever, and if we had this talk where they were like, shut it down, or like, there's just no way, or we would, I don't know what we would have done.
Well, the thing that's bizarre to me, again, like, I'm always scratching my head as I'm trying to figure this company out, and I still haven't done it in 40 years, but, you know, they're I don't know about now, I'm sure it's probably still pretty strong. As of a couple of years ago, they were the 6th or 7th most recognizable brand on the planet. And then you look at their viewership of their videos and things that were WWE associated, and it was in the billions of views.
Oh yeah, the YouTube channel and stuff.
Yes, and so, you know, you see all of these talents going out and doing this in the third party, obviously drawing eyeballs not only to themselves but to the product.
Yeah.
And I would dare say, just take a stab at the dark, while your ratings are in this like weakened point. I don't understand why you would do that. Why you would cut them off.
Then the other thing is like proof of concept, where it's like, okay, wait, these talents are not doing anything, are doing something on their own, and people are watching it. So don't you think you should translate that to the television? But like, I have no answers.
Right?
Yeah, right. I have no answers for it.
Yeah, it's incredible.
But it was all a blessing in disguise. So everything happens for a reason, kind of thing, you know. And I feel sorry for my friends that are there and are gonna have to deal with that because they've worked hard to have these outside interests, you know, become a thing and a lucrative thing and a fun thing. I'm sure, you know. It sucks. Yeah, it really sucks.
Now, you had mentioned earlier tonight when we were having dinner that you had gone to some ECW shows when you were younger.
Oh yeah. The first one, I was so young that I was like kind of terrified to go. I don't think my parents would really let me go. But the first one I finally got to was TNN taping. So you had already gone to WCW, but I was at in White Plains. It was the one and only show in White Plains. So Awesome was actually Mike Awesome wins the belt back from Tanaka. Tanaka has it for about a month there.
Yeah,
he gets it back. Awesome show. Stairway to Hell, Dreamer, Credible was the main event. I'll never forget it.
Nice.
I still have at intermission. I ran down. I had the program, and Doring and Roadkill were signing and having signed, which is crazy because like I talk to those guys like every day.
Yeah,
you know. Now and I'm like, dude, I ran down like a mark to get guys to sign, like, you know, my program. So it's pretty cool. But that that's one of those moments like in my fandom, like the electricity of the live ECW crowd. That's like when you like.
And how old were you at this point?
That was my freshman year in high school.
So 14.
Yeah. You know, that's like, I mean, just. All the triggers are going off. We're like, this is what it's about.
Well, again, you see all the pieces. You have the athletic background. You've wrestled amateur. You've been a fan since 5 and watching the WWF entertainment brand, and coming into WCW now at 14. You know, getting into those formative years of becoming a young man, and there's ECW there for you.
And that same show that you just triggered this memory. I remember Paul got one of his, Paul rah-rah speeches that wouldn't be on the TV, but would be there to get the crowd going, and some chick showed her tits, and I'm like, lose my mind, like stuff like that, you just forget about it. So
perfect for 14.
Yeah, exactly, right. How are you not a fan of that? How do you leave that show not completely jazzed up?
Yeah. Well, we were talking a second ago about, the things that should be obvious and should be done, and the stupidity of, stopping the talents from working with third parties. ECW didn't have the luxury of making mistakes. So when we had a decision to make, if you had somebody that could put asses in the seats, it was a no-brainer. It didn't matter whether the person was liked, not liked, had a connection into the company. If they could put asses in the seats, they were there for that reason. And it's just one of those things that just bugs me because I can't contemplate the reason for it. Like I've always said, Vince McMahon, I can give you a lot of adjectives in describing him. I would never use the adjective stupid or unintelligent. Vince, a brilliant man. And so I would think even for the fans listening to us, what we're talking about right now is pretty commonsensical, makes sense to anybody that gets it. And yet Vince McMahon, the Mount Rushmore of professional wrestling, and built all that, and somehow he's missing it. Is it intentional or is it?
I don't. So I got my second run. I got a lot closer to him. I actually I got hernia, which I was like, I've been on the road 2 years straight, and I got hernia, which is not a big deal, it's a little 2-month surgery, whatever. And I was kind of like, well, that's kind of awesome. I get off. And I was like, I'll never forget. It was this time of the year. It was September. Football was starting. And I was like, hang out with my daughter. This is great.
Yeah.
And I got all situated. Got a surgery scheduled, and I told the office, got all set up, and I was pumped. The next day, I got a phone call, and it's Mark Ronald from the office. I'm like, why is he calling me back? I thought I would. I was like so checked out. I was like 2 months of just finally doing nothing. I'm like, what's up? He goes, Vince saw your name on the injury report, and he wants you to be like an intern producer while you're out and learn that side of the business. So I was like, I'm not in a position to say no here.
Suck you back.
Yeah, I was like, what? So I actually wound up working way more than I would have as talent. Suit, every TV in there, and I really got to see how his brain works, and how the WWE product works, and being in there and really like in the belly of the beast. So it was a very awesome learning experience, for sure, and definitely made me a better performer, especially for them because I know what they want. Right. It was cool, but and I guess to get around to your question, like I saw the genius in him or something, and he would like personally change it and make it better, you know. But I guess it's the old like you can't bat 1,000, I guess,
right.
you know. So maybe that's the answer, you know. It's just not always going to be.
It's interesting. I mean,
even at his age too, like people think, oh, he's crazy. I'm like, no, I watch him. He's crazy, but he's not. Doesn't need a straitjacket crazy. He's crazy because he's got the biggest balls in the world. That's why he's crazy. He's not. Yeah, I watched the wheel spin, and there was even a time when someone asked him something, and he was saying something like, just an old school like trivia fact, things like that. You know, it was pretty funny. Or one time actually, Zach and I had a pitch. We wanted to turn heel, and we told him we wanted to be like the Rougeau brothers, like so babyface that we are heels. And he was like, and he stopped talking about the Rougeaus. Like, so he's not like not with it. Like some people want to just make up. But
sure. Yeah, I'd never seen anything other than a nose to the grindstone workaholic.
Sure, that too, for sure. Yeah.
But and again, I don't want to sound like I'm blowing smoke up your ass, but to me, if I have a company and I've invested in you for what you say, 13 years or the 17 you've been in the business, knowing that you've worked behind the scenes, you've been a hell of a talent in the ring, that I certainly wouldn't want you going someplace else. You know the product, you know the brand, you know the company mission, and you know the ABCs of the company. It just seems to me that, and not just with you, but a lot of people that are coming and then getting the chance to leave, and instead of them trying to hold on to them, and you've got a roster full of writers that have never been in the ring, that have never been passionate about the wrestling. And so it's just, again, one of those things that just keeps nagging at the back of my brain as to the why of it. It just seems so senseless.
There's just so much to that. Like, I don't know. The writers are, in doing that producer gig, I kind of developed like a soft spot for them. Like, they don't have it easy either.
I bet. They're
for sure in the belly. This is my favorite story. One of the writers I became buddies with said, I think it doesn't even matter for the story, but I think it was Ryback and Punk were in a match that they've done a couple times called 3 Stages of Hell, where it's like one fall and it turns into a different gimmick.
Right.
And so we're in the meeting and Vince goes, we can't call it that name's terrible, or we can't use hell. I don't know what the reason was. He goes, we have a meeting in 48 hours, I want 50 different versions of what the new name of that match is. And they're like, okay. So these guys don't sleep for 2 days, and they're in the tower just banging out all these names. And ready. Finally, 40 hours, they have the meeting. They're like, oh, sir, here's the list. He goes, what? The list of the names? He goes, oh, don't worry, we're going to go with 3 Stages of Hell.
Oh, you got it.
So that's just like in a nutshell of like what they're, you know what I mean? Oof. Yeah, so those poor guys, they don't have any,
Yeah. Well, I don't think there's anything wrong with striving for perfectionism, and always making it better. But then, like, when you say that, and then the flip side of it is you see all these things we've been talking about that are going through, and I just read this past week that he, went back to the, during the show, rewriting the show and having the writers rewrite the show.
I've been on Raw not knowing my times in the ring.
Wow.
Not knowing.
Yeah, that's gotta be fun. So they just send it to you in the ring?
Yeah, the ref's just talking to you, like literally, the producer's sweating it out too, like they don't know either, just it's between this and that. Have fun,
Yeah.
It's just that live TV is a beast within itself, right?
Sure,
when it's chaotic and you're making changes like that. I mean, I've seen the show literally ripped up almost an hour before it goes. 3-hour show, that's a lot to start scrambling to figure out what everyone's doing.
Well, and so the fans...
Not a lot of fun, and not the way to get your performers to be in the best light that they possibly can be.
Sure, absolutely.
It's kind of...
Well, so the fans that wouldn't have it, be able to understand things, they've never done it, you go to the ring and you have, let's say they've told you 10 minutes, and you've gone to the ring and you've got a 10-minute match planned in your head, and then suddenly you get cued by the ref, hey, it's 3 minutes, or whatever. You've got to try to just
adapt, and it's rough.
Yeah, not good. It's
and then, like I said, not the real sad thing is you're not putting the two performers in the best position to not fail.
Back to TNA. So you're there. I mean, I know since I was there, there's been substantial change.
Oh man, honestly, it's incredible that what Scott has done, that it didn't die. It was literally on its deathbed. So that alone is very commendable, and it's been so fun. It's been just a fun play. It makes me. The ECW fanboy in me makes me feel like I'm in like the modern day ECW. A bunch of my buddies, really good friends like Al's and Anderson, Heath Slater, these guys who I just adore. So like to be in a locker with them again is the best. And we're all these fired guys. So we call ourselves the Misfits.
I'm the Misfit toys.
And we're getting a chance to to prove ourselves, you know, kind of, and have fun, and you know, not just be another peg, you know, in the system, you know. So, and then there's the guys there that I feel like, and I'm not trying to say we're better than them, but we have that WWE rub, and that we're bringing them up. Sure. With our credibility and our, you know, whatever, you know, people who are our Twitter followers, or, you know, our social media background, things like that are really helping everybody bring more eyes to the product and see these guys who are already there. Right. They're talented, you know. So it's got a lot of potential, I think, and I'm obviously very biased, but I think it's so much fun, and it's been fun right now in this pandemic situation. I can't wait for like a live crowd to see, you know, to see what, you know, because it's come a long way. It's come a long way from the Dixie era. And like I said, it should be dead. It shouldn't even be around. Right. So that part alone is very, very cool. And I think that should give it some street cred, you know? Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. Well, you hit on something there, because I've often talked about this with ECW. There's an X factor quantity that goes in. You know, if you come in and you get your break in, say, Company A, and you've been with Company A and you build yourself up in Company A, and all you know is Company A, you really don't know what else the rest of the world holds. For sure. You had the opportunity to travel around Japan, and now TNA, and 13 long years in WWE. I wish that there was a way to be able to just write it down in words and convey to the fans what that freedom after coming out of a system as rigid and structured as WWE. Yeah. And again, been a fan since 5 years old, an athlete, and all these things in your background, and growing up and you know, loving the business, then getting into the business. You have a perspective that I think is much needed in wrestling, right? Somebody that's been a fan, that's had that background in athletics, and now come in, and the X Factor. You've worked for this incredible company, WWE, and I'll say it for you, certainly not utilized up to your capacity, and then you get to go someplace else, and where that freedom is offered to you. It is it's like being released from a straitjacket. And like you said, now you're with your buddies, and so I'm really curious to see what you create in TNA. Well, you know,
it's really just been so much fun. I mean, we have so much stuff in the bank because we film so much the way the pandemic style of filming, which makes the most sense and the safest way is we do like, you know, a week of just bang out so much content. So we're filmed all the way through late October right now. So like, nice. I've done so much stuff that I'm like just really excited for people to see, you know, it's going to air.
Now I'm curious, like in that kind of situation with the pandemic, once you've committed this stuff to video, and has there been a time when you've looked back and thought, oh, you know, or say some big current event happens that would maybe be impactful on that?
I think that, and I've actually thought about this prior, I think that's the only downfall, or like the most blaring downfall of like the way you have to do it like that. Like, what if, you know, we have 8 weeks of TV in the bank, like we really do. What if, you know, there's a groundswell for whatever, Willie Mack, and everyone loves Willie Mack. Sure. You know, he got over something he did, and then people are clamoring for him. But you ever got 8 weeks of TV, and whatever Willie Mack did, whether he was on or not, you know, you're kind of like handcuffed. Other than that, you know, we're in this unreal time. You know, it is what it is. I'm just glad that the content's getting done, and the fans are getting stuff. So,
is there a capacity, if some, you know, God forbid, like another terrorist attack or something would happen? Is there a way for them to go? Is there a mechanism for them to go in and maybe incorporate that and plug it in?
I think it would have to be like self-done, you know, videos and promos and stuff like that. It can't be bell to bell,
right?
Obviously, so that would be the pivot, I think.
Sure. Fascinating, because I've always been an advocate, being a wrestler, that the more places there are, the better it is for the boys, the better it is for the fans. And you know, the fans get a much better product. The X Factor I was talking about, just to take that one step further, is that you come with all those things, with all those assets we talked about, but then also a little bit of vinegar and piss in your belly. You want to prove to the world that you're not just this level guy, you want to be this guy.
I mean, I have nothing really bad to say about my WWE career. Sure. It was an incredible opportunity, made a lot of money. It's given me the platform to do what I do now.
Absolutely.
What I think happened was Vince liked me a lot, actually. But he pegged me as a good hand, the guy that's going to make the guys that he really wants to get over look better than they are.
Kiss of death.
And he called me a good hand in meetings where the producers would come out telling me. He said it to my face a couple times, and it's not the best spot, but it's a spot, you know, it's a backhanded compliment almost, if you will. And I took pride in that, like, you know what I mean? This is a work. So, like, if you're not that good and I can go in there and make you look better than you really are, like, there's something to that. That's kind of, there's a point of pride in that.
Right.
That being said, he never saw me in the light of anything more than that, like to be a top guy. And now I'm going to take that into my own hands where, you know, I'm literally getting opportunities in fact to become a top guy and, you know, and kind of just, you know, have more of a everlasting, you know, mark in my career, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Instead of just the guy that, you know, had okay matches, you know, I can have, you know, more compelling storylines and things that I can really sink my teeth into that I wasn't given the opportunity to do.
Sure. Well, in full disclosure, I'd already asked him this question earlier, but I want to ask it again. Camera ruling. When you broke into wrestling and made the conscious decision to not go into amateur and scholarship and make this a career path, was your thought ever, I want to make more money than anybody's ever made in wrestling?
No, never. Actually, I didn't even think about it until WWE started paying me when I was going.
Yeah, like
but the first Dreamer got us signed at Zach Ryan and I, we were 20 years old. We were getting $500 a week. We had to go to Deep South Wrestling in Atlanta, and we were getting $500 a week. I was like, I thought I was a millionaire. Like, it was unfathomable to me. Like, the other thing that's a big point of pride for me is I've never had another job in my life. My parents and my dad particularly forced me to be a caddy, so that's off the books BS job where you're caddy for golf, and I despise golf to this day because of it, because I hate it so much. That's the only other job I've ever had in my life. You know what I mean? I've been a pro wrestler since I was 18, basically.
So if it wasn't the money, what was your ambition?
Is to be the best, to be a champion, to be. As I've gotten into the business, I think to be admired by your peers is very, very, very important to me. So and I think if you lose sight of that and stop striving for that, it's almost kind of like, go get another job, because this is too insane and too crazy for the stress and the travel and the pain and it doesn't make sense if you're not willing to try to get to that upper echelon. Like why would you deal with all the things that go with wrestling? You know what I mean? Right.
You know. You said married and kids.
Yep.
Boys, girls.
Two girls.
Right? Mackenzie and Madison. Nice. I got my boys on mine. On Connor and Caden. So obviously they're at the WWE. I'm not familiar anymore with what the routine road trips were, but back in the day it was pretty substantial. And I always thought to myself, not that I wouldn't have liked to have had kids earlier, but I'm glad I didn't whenever I was in the bulk, because I think it would have been incredibly painful to not be there for the kids' first words, first steps, first birthday. Did WWE offer that possibility for you guys?
So that was interesting, because I wasn't used to that. But the trips would be Friday through Tuesday morning, depending on where you were coming from. And my wife hates when I say this. I love her to death. She's my best friend. She puts up with my insane love of this business and everything that goes with it. But I would be on the road when we were married, and I'd miss her, but I would just miss her. I wouldn't long for her, you know what I mean? When I had my first daughter, Mackenzie, I'd be on the road. I would truly feel like in my gut that I miss her. Like, so that was a different feeling for me to deal with that on the road and stuff. So
absolutely. And
then on the other side of that whole thing is, I think what we do is so special and so unique that one of my main goals right now is I want my two girls, to at least have memories of me being in the ring and seeing it. I don't want them to live through like YouTube and stuff like that. I want them to remember. So I need to at least keep doing this until. My first memories are 5 years old, so they're 3 and 2 months. So I got a long ways to go.
2 months, wow. Any sleep?
No. Actually, tonight I will at the hotel. I can't wait. Sometimes on these trips, I walk into the hotel it's like so that's real important for me. I just think not. One of my buddies just told me some story. Maybe it was Dreamer or Heath. I don't remember, but something where their daughters were playing with their action figure, and they thought just every kid's dad has an action figure, right? Like things like that. That's like, man, what we do is really unique and special, and I just kind of I want them to experience that. So I really, really want them to see me live, a couple times, enough to have some memories that they'll have forever.
Yeah. So I'm a firm believer that everything that happens for a reason.
Me too.
And so, was this meant to be that after 13 years in WWE, you get this opportunity with TNA and bring all those assets and X factors we talked about, but also now two beautiful young girls that are going to be coming into the age where they can become cognizant.
I mean, I signed a contract last May for more money than I ever dreamed of making in this business, like unfathomable about money. Yeah. And like you said, it was just everything happens for a reason. I thought that was it, a 5-year contract. I'd done the producer thing. I kind of had my mindset of like where my career was going.
Sure.
And this unthinkable pandemic and the firings, which I never thought. And even when it happened, we were all like, "They're never gonna fire people. That's gonna look so bad." They bailed a month into this thing, so it wasn't even close. So I just think everything happens for a reason, because I was okay, but now I'm like really happy. You know what I mean? I'm really happy. I'm doing what I love. I'm having fun. I got to wrestle one of my heroes tonight, share the ring with you. Someone that I literally told people, like, last time I was fired, I was like, Shane's the one that got away. I would see him on shows and have matches, and I'm like, shit, I really wish I got to work with him.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
So, things like that, and just instead of just showing up and doing the Superstars match for 6 minutes, and it's a way more. I'm not making that same money, and I probably never will again in my life. It was insane. But that's not what's important. I'm truly happy in what I'm doing. So it's a big difference.
Well, I found in my career the same thing. Like when you were making the big money, it was wonderful. It took a lot of pressure off other things.
Yeah.
But I just would catch myself coming home and just feeling completely empty. Not like when I was younger in the business, where every night was an adventure, and being on the road with the boys was like being in a fraternity.
Of course. Yeah.
And when you start, for me anyway, when I started thinking to myself, like, I don't care about the paycheck. That's I'm thinking to myself, this is like crazy, because this is what we do, right? This is our profession, to make a living, to pay, put food in our families' mouths. You lay eyes on that first baby, and then the second one, and you don't realize how much you can really love something.
My dog, I used to think, man, I'll never love anyone as much as I love my dog. My dog doesn't even cross my mind anymore.
Yeah.
Because I have these kids. Yeah, I'm sorry, but it just doesn't even, like, I know there's pet lovers out there. Trust me, if you have kids, you'll feel the same way, because I've had people tell me the same thing. There's nothing else like it, man.
Yeah, it's great. Well, you'd mentioned about the action figures earlier, and one of the things that I found, it was, I don't know, maybe something Freudian in here or not, but when my kids, they used to play, like I told you, every day with their friends. They'd all come down to the porch, and they'd have a big Tupperware thing, and they'd play for hours out there. And I started noticing something, that my sons, Connor and Caden, when they were using Dad's action figure, Dad never won.
Oh, man.
Dad was always getting his ass kicked. Right? Come on, something's wrong there.
Oh, man, my daughter's real into, like, Disney princesses and stuff like that, and I have my extra, I'm always like, you sure you don't want to play with it?
Yeah.
It's not working yet, hopefully. Like,
you're going to be jobbing a Cinderella pretty soon.
Well, I'll take what I can get at this point, because she's just no interest, yeah. She knows it's me, and she'll say that, but she doesn't play with it, so I'm working on that.
Yeah, it'll come. Yeah. In the long term, have you ever thought of the idea of retiring and moving to something else? Or
that's another thing that I've thought.
Not that I'm not implying you're that age, but I mean, it comes to every one of us in our careers.
We were talking at dinner about how, like, at some point, when I started, 30 was like the kiss of death.
Right.
Like, oh, your career's you're washed up. Which is so far gone now. Chris Jericho's literally 50 and working on top, like, high level main event matches. So it's like, if you take care of yourself and you put the work in, you can do it. Until that point. So that's pretty cool to me. And actually, a big thing, and I can give him a shout out and credit for, is seeing Dustin Rhodes last year with Cody have that, like, epic match at 50, and I went, Jesus Christ! So if he can do that, I said, I just turned 35. Like, I got a long ways to go.
Baby.
And it's the same thing as what I've been saying. Like, we're so privileged to be doing this. Actually, when I was the producer gig, I got cleared. The day I got cleared, I went to Vince. I said, look, man, this was amazing. Flattered, hell of a learning experience. But I said, Father Time is undefeated. I love being in that ring, and I got to be in it as long as I can until one day, Father Time will get me. So as literally as long as my body will let me, there's no way. I switched to that, the singlet top and stuff, and someone asked me, I said, so I can do indies when I'm 70. That's why. It's gonna be awesome. It's a great investment.
I'm asking another generational question. My generation, as you know, was decimated by the opioids, and not making excuses for any of us. the rigors of the road back then. We were on the road 350 days a year, multiple shots on weekends. And you just eventually have to do. You're hurting emotionally from not being home with your loved ones. I've heard and been told that your guys' generation have by and large learned those lessons.
Yes.
And so there's not as much of that as prevalent.
I don't know if they've learned those lessons or the drug testing was so strict that they've had to figure it out. Maybe if I had to take a prediction at it, I think the downfall of my generation might be the strikes and the concussions and stuff.
Sure.
Like you said, the over the top athletic style that's developed,
right.
and the dangerous, real high risk stuff that goes on way too much on a regular basis.
Sure.
And we've also been educated about concussion stuff in WWE. Chris Nowinski comes and talks to you, every 6 months or so, and it's that meeting. I always say, but when that meeting starts, everyone's joking around, cutting up. It's another day, and by the end, he's hitting you with such cold, hard facts. You walk out of it,
sure.
it's quiet. You can hear a pin drop because it's scary shit. And,
absolutely.
I think hopefully that information at least will help, even though wrestling is what it is. It has evolved into that style, and that probably won't go away because it's what's expected. But hopefully the education on the concussion side will, people will know. Okay, that was I got rocked. I got to take a break. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, it's so funny. No, not funny. Ironic. I'm not sure what the exact word would be, but when I was a kid and coming up in the business, you get your bell rung and get checked by the doctor, and they'd say it was a concussion. The promoters would literally say, "Oh, good, it's just a concussion." And it's just and
get back in there. I mean, that was even when I was a kid, football. Suck it up and get back in. Yeah, which Nowinski will tell you is the absolute worst thing you could do, because a concussion on top of concussion is like permanent damage area, whereas you think you get rocked, you need to take a break, big time.
Well, when I saw what was the name of the movie that had Will Smith and it was about
the main heel in that is the guy that comes and talks to WWE, the Dr. Maroon from Pittsburgh.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, Dr. Malu, I'd met him. First of all, the story immediately captured me because I remember when Mike Webster had retired. Mm-hmm. Captain Football, right? I mean, it was the all-American guy, consummate professional. And we started hearing, you pick up the newspaper and Mike Webster was popped for writing a bad script someplace. Webster, it just didn't make sense.
Yeah.
And when I saw that movie, I don't think I've ever had such a visceral unease watching a movie. Because first of all, what we've done, right, for all these years.
Yeah.
And, all of a sudden you're hearing those voices again. It's good, it's just a concussion. And, and I watched that movie and I remember sitting there and there was an urge in me to get up and walk out because it was so
it's too much, right?
Heavy,
crazy. And especially guys in your era like that, he said, "Don't put your hands up or you're a pussy." Stuff is like, God, it was cool to watch, but not anymore. At the time,
Isn't it crazy how the world changes? When you
pretty quickly,
just like technology, politics, whatever. But just look at the wrestling industry in say 50 years. What used to be, what was, and what has become. And I'm so thankful to hear that they're doing this type of thing with Nowinski and taking those precautions, because it was my feeling as a young man, whether it was an accurate feeling or not, was that almost that we were expendable. Mm-hmm. So you get your bell rung.
That way.
Yeah, so maybe it wasn't just my perception, but that for me, watching all the deaths in my industry, in my generation, and then the concussion stuff on top of it, it was pretty sobering. I if nothing else, I always hoped to myself that hopefully the kids that are coming up paid attention to that and learned the lessons of it, because it's once you're trapped in that, it's pretty impossible to get out.
For sure, yeah.
So it's good to hear that. But well, listen, man, it's been great talking to you. I really appreciate it.
I've been a fan of yours for basically my whole life. And you transcended from fan to worker. You know, so
had a blast in the ring.
It was an honor for me to get to do that finally.
Well, what I said in the ring tonight, I mean, again, if you've known anything about me, the things I've been talking about with the business is in sore need of people like you that can do what you do. I wish you the best of luck in TNA. You. Please tell Scotty and everybody down there I said hello.
He's the best, cool.
Yeah, he's a nut, but he's got a hell of a head on his shoulders for business. But It's I wish you the best luck with you and your family and your daughters. Love to meet them sometime.
Sure, absolutely. We'll have you back at Creative Bro. I missed you when you were there, so
yeah.
You got it.
Appreciate you, brother.
Thanks, Shane.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for watching. Be sure to check us out on YouTube and Facebook. Like, comment, and share to let us know you're watching. From the Appalachian Expose, I'm Sunny D.